It's my great pleasure now to introduce David Main. He's our keynote wrap-up speaker for the day. David is President and CEO of Aquinox Pharma. So all of these challenges that we've discussed over the course of the day, David has lived, and he has survived and has the wounds to show that he's fought those battles. David is also the chairman of Biotech Canada. And the reason why I actually invited David to this session, aside from his accomplishments and his very impressive CV, is that I had an opportunity to attend a breakfast with David that was hosted by Biotech Canada at Bio in Philadelphia earlier this year. And David just gave a great summary of some of the challenges, but some of the potential opportunities within our sector across Canada. And I thought, you know, given that we're talking about a provincial strategy, that we do have now a new federal government in place, and that a lot of the challenges that we've discussed go far beyond the borders of Ontario, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring David to share his sort of insights into this. So please join me in welcoming David Main.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, David, so nice to see you. Thank you so much for hanging around this late in the day. I thought it was kind of strange to get asked, somebody from the West to come and speak at an LSO meeting to give a national perspective. And I only concluded, it must have been one of two things. Either, Jason, you're working on a severance package. It was either that, or LSO holds some sort of human sacrifice at the end of their meetings. So, but I think the real reason is Jason knew that I was going to come and speak my mind. And I think I've earned the right to speak my mind, because as Jason said, I am covered in scars from this industry. I have failed more than probably anyone else in this room. But I've also been very benefited by some great teams, building 3 great companies. I've been part of raising close to $1 billion in equity and partnering financing. And through that, I think I've learned quite a bit that I can share with you today as to kind of what I'll hope to change the dialogue a little bit from some of the things I heard. Because I do really want to compliment LSO in the panels that were put together today, because I thought the panel topics were fantastic and some of the honest comments were absolutely refreshing. But then in some of the sort of hallway conversations, there's still some things I'm hearing that doesn't sit very well with me. So I'd like to kind of hit on some of those. So my preface before I start right now is the views you are about to hear are mine only. They will be expressed by me, and they do not necessarily represent the official views of Biotech Canada or Aquinox Pharmaceuticals. But I was asked to talk about the national perspective. So I had to sit and think from what perspective was I going to make some of my comments. So I could make comments through the lens of a business leader as the CEO of Aquinox. I'm a capitalist at heart. Or I could provide some of my views through the lens of the director of the trade association, so Biotech Canada, which is really from a view of being a lobbyist and an industry resource. Or I could provide my views from just being a citizen of this wonderful country and how I think that this industry should be influencing this country and benefiting all citizens. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with being a patriot, but also recognizing that we're taxpayers. So I want to go through each of these, and actually I think I'm going to probably try to leave you with my strongest views on the last topic as a citizen, because I think that's the railing we all need to hold on to when we try to make difficult decisions and when we try to prioritize what we're going to try to do as an industry. So remember, as a business leader or as a capitalist, my view is that we should be trying to reduce the system, get government out of our lives as much as possible, remove barriers. We want to prosper. I don't want my money being consumed by the government. But again, I recognize that there are certainly important policy items that need to be put into play. And I'll certainly come back to some of those reduce the system ideas. But you know that I sit on the board of the trade association. So I also understand that if there's going to be a system, and of course there has to be a system, then as an industry we need to learn how to harness that system and make it work for us better. But even there I get a little uncomfortable at times because I think sometimes we advocate too strongly for policy change and initiatives that just benefit us as an industry, then it's us versus them, or it's, as I heard earlier by one of the panel members, we're trying to get money for Ontario versus BC. I think we need to get rid of that kind of dialogue. And that's why I think that the railing we all need to hold on to is as a citizen, as a taxpayer, and how we're going to optimize the system for all beneficiaries. And that goes beyond life sciences. And I'm going to conclude my talk today really talking about some of the key policy initiatives that I think that are important that won't just benefit the people in this room, they will benefit many other industries that I think can transform the economy of Canada. So remember, from each of these perspectives, there is commonality, but there's also conflict. And so it's trying to walk that tightrope between these three perspectives that I'll try to share with you today some experience. So let's start with the business leader perspective at Aquinox. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with our company, it's a UBC spin-off company done in 2006. I co-founded it with four scientists from the University of British Columbia, and we are developing a new class of anti-inflammatory drugs. We currently have 30 employees, and to counteract one of the biggest challenges and one of the frustrations I've faced in 25 years in this business, for the first time, I've opened also up a US operation to speed the recruitment of employees, and I'll come back to that. But I can't stand here today and be on the side of what I keep hearing about the lack of capital, because if I'm to stand here representing Aquinox, we have been very successful in raising capital and accessing capital, and today over $200 million US raised. So I'll come back to that. We're developing a new drug that in a very rapid period of time has gone from just a concept company to now our lead product going to be entering phase 3 trials shortly. So I think we've been highly successful, following a very standard path. We've been well capitalized and we're not cutting corners. And just to sort of highlight then some of the history about the access to capital, this company was founded on a $500,000 friends and family raise through myself and people I knew. And that money was raised with one express purpose: to pay for my airfare to go out and find more money. People often ask me, when do you start raising money? And I start raising money as soon as I've closed my last round of money. It's a relationship business. You have to be out there. You cannot do it from your office. You cannot do it from sitting in Ontario or in BC or whatever. The capital is out there. And you have to go to the capital and be a persuasive salesperson why you have a great idea and why it's a great investment. And you cannot, and I remember the words of my father: if you're not successful, you have nobody to blame but yourself. So go out and work harder, hone your pitch better, and go see more people and get used to people saying no a lot. But if you keep doing that, then you can go and raise some money. And I think I did something that had never been done before in closing the Series A financing for Aquinox in 2007. I think I was the first private company to take more than half of my money from US investors and bring a strategic investor as part of that first financing. And I know he left earlier, but I thanked Chris Halleck at the side. Johnson & Johnson was a fantastic and continues to be a fantastic partner to this company. And one of the things I wanted to leave everybody in this room is with J-Lab setting up here in Toronto, you do not know how lucky you are. That is an amazing organization. Don't screw it up. So on the backs of raising that money, what did we do as a team? We marched down the path of doing what we said we were going to do and hitting milestones. We went from a screening program against a novel enzyme to locating a lead drug through our own internal medicinal chemistry efforts, which then allowed me to raise $25 million more a few years later that Pfizer Ventures led. Again, all preceding investors participated again, brought in another strategic investor. That allowed me to hit more milestones, which then allowed another round of financing to prep this company in early 2014 to go public. The first Canadian biotech company to go public, I believe, since when did Espriva go public? So again, I think that was a first for Aquinox. I'm very proud of that, but it was on the backs of amazing support from a group of investors. And then ultimately, just a few months ago, as we're prepping to go to phase 3, did a $98 million financing. So I can't stand here today and say that there's a lack of capital. There is a lot of capital available, and if you go to the right places and try hard and have a team that is credible and knows what they're doing, I think you can access it. But the thing that really troubles me the most is that foreign capital is more available than Canadian capital. And I'm going to come back to that, because that is something that I think there is a problem with, because we are not maximizing the opportunity for our country. Foreign capital is a great thing, but it's not the solution to all problems. Our science can compete globally, and our entrepreneurs can compete globally. The senior management pool is thin in Canada. I continue to have to recruit. I just told you that I'm opening a US operation so that I can recruit more quickly. So when I think of some of the benefits that we've had at Aquinox from the Canadian and provincial governments, there's certainly been some, and one that I would particularly like to point out that I think has been fantastic is the BC Investment Tax Credit. I think that's a program that should be modeled in every province across this country, because it is a great source of capital that isn't coming directly from the government. And I think if you look at the track record of BC in spawning companies, I was part of QLT, Inex, there was Espriva, there was Angiotech, there's now Aquinox, there is Pronai that's going, Xenon's been successful, Zymeworks is hitting it out of the park. BC has punched way above its weight in successful development of companies, and most of those companies would tell you that that BC Investment Tax Credit program was the genesis of most of their early money, and it is definitely something worth looking at. All of the others are also very important, but there continues to be some barriers that drive me crazy. Immigration, I hear about NAFTA and people flowing across the border. It's nonsense. The hassle that I have to go through to get an executive who is going to get paid in the top 5 percentile of all Canadians is ridiculous. We should want those people coming here as quickly as possible, and the headaches and the amount of money we have to spend to get them here, and then for them to bring their spouse and their spouse a real estate agent and find out they can't work as a real estate agent is just not acceptable, and we need to correct that. And of course, the tax system is different, so they're moving here. I used to be able to deduct my mortgage payments. I can't now. And we need to find it more attractive for people to want to come here. We're talking about immigration every day on the news. Well, this is one group of people that I think we want immigrating to Canada. We want more high-paid executives that bring skills to this country that can help us nurture and mentor more people. So this is something that I just is a bee in my bonnet. I was very excited to hear the Liberal government's platform for effectively a chief scientific officer. I think that's fantastic. But then when I hear they're going to change the rules on stock options, like, come on. We're going backwards in the dark ages, and they're going to resurrect labor-sponsored funds? That's not the answer, folks. Okay, so there's some things there. This is where I think we can advocate and push policy to move towards the things that are beneficial for all innovative industries, not just life sciences, and those two in particular, especially the stock option changes, that is going backwards, not forwards. So those are some of my capitalist strong views, and there's probably I could stand here for many more hours and talk more of them, but let me change hats and now talk about the trade association perspective, so from Biotech Canada. But I do want to highlight when I said that I have the right to speak my mind. I've spent countless hours giving back to this industry as a director and now the chair of Biotech Canada. I was formerly a director and chair of Life Sciences BC. I was humbled to be invited to be on the board of Bio. I have given, I don't know how many countless hours of mentoring to young entrepreneurs. And so I do try to then represent what it means to give back to the community. And please advance. So if you have the opportunity, please take a chance to read a very good publication put out by Biotech Canada called the Ecosystem Report. And it's basically a very simplified message is, why does the ecosystem of big and large companies and trade associations and incubators make a very important difference to this industry? Well, it's because we think that the benefits of our industry will modernize our economy, will improve the health of our citizens, and improve the environment. And there's probably a whole bunch of other things it'll do. To hear Don McCabe today, I thought that was one of the most refreshing people I've heard in a long time, to not forget about, that things that we do in science can improve things like make a farmer's life more productive. Great. It's not just about developing drugs. And that's why I really want to keep highlighting some of these points about the dialogue and the things that we need to advocate. So our goal, as the ecosystem report for Biotech Canada, is to make us a top global bioeconomy where we work together through people, our partnerships, we focus on the right financing and investments and channel it into the right places. Plus, we want a supportive regulatory environment. And that regulatory environment isn't just to create companies and to export products. We need the right regulatory environment for people to do business in Canada. It's the things that I have learned from being on the board of Biotech Canada is that the support for this industry is great. Everybody wants to use this as a poster child, but amongst ourselves, sometimes we're our own worst enemies in having too many voices, saying too many things, too many asks, and not sending a clear message about what we want to really stimulate this industry. And there's always this constant balance and debate between the large companies and the small companies. And again, everybody wants to use Aquinox as a poster child, but then, Chris, sitting on the panel, said he was introduced as the big guy. He said, well, I don't know if I'm the big bad pharma. We've got to stop that dialogue because Aquinox wants to grow up and be a big pharma one day. I want to sell products in Canada, and it absolutely drives me crazy that provincial governments are using market access as a way to ration resources. We've got to change the dialogue away from cost and to value provision. And so small companies need to be on the side of Merck and GSK and Baxter because we all want to be there one day. That doesn't mean that their policies and some of the things that the larger companies do don't need to change. Again, I think sometimes they're their own worst enemies. But we need to find a way to get both a federal umbrella of getting drugs approved that are safe and effective and into the hands of Canadians in a very effective and efficient way. And I'm just going to use one little vignette to tell you why I'm so angry about this dialogue about market access that has been going on for as long as I've been in this industry. I was one of the first employees of QLT. And a large part of my career was responsible for media relations and getting the executive team out in front of government officials. And everybody wanted to use QLT as the poster child. And one of the products that I had the benefit of working on just prior to leaving QLT was a drug called Visudyne, which was the first product ever approved for age-related macular degeneration, a serious form of blindness. And you know what? The last province in this country to give it market access was British Columbia. That is wrong. That is despicable. That cannot happen. If you're going to give companies in Canada, use companies in Canada like Aquinox as the poster children, then you got to be making sure our products are getting to the patients because that's what we're trying to do. So we need to change that dialogue as well. So after that rant, now let me tell you about the perspective from me as a citizen, because this is really what I think is really important for all of us in trying to make some important decisions about how to prioritize what we want the government to do, what not to do, and what we need to take ownership for. So I was in business school. I became a disciple of Michael Porter. I think he's one of the most brilliant economists to ever write. Again, he probably got too much of that Harvard business savvy, knew how to market himself and write books and make money that way. But he had some very important things. But something that never left me is a statement here that he said that he believes that innovation is the central issue in economic prosperity. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So innovation is about how do we get better at doing things. But to say that we got better means we didn't just invent it, we got it into people's hands to change something. So I want innovation to improve our quality and standard of life. I want to diversify the economy, not just life sciences. And why do I want to diversify our economy? Because we're a wealthy nation with lots of natural resources, but they're going to run out one day, and they go in cycles. So we want to be able to counteract those cycles, and the profits that are made in the oiled fields, we would like them to be able to, to help bolster other economies. That's because I want an increased ROI on our tax dollars. The more money we spend on things, I want to know we're getting more back. And I think innovation is the key to that, not just in life sciences, in the tech sector, in the mining sector, everywhere that we're getting better by using innovative and technological approaches and spending money on R&D, I think should benefit us all. And then lastly, and not least importantly, I want my kids to have the opportunity to have high-paying, really interesting work. I don't want them, again, no offense, but it's been broadcast in BC for the last 5 years. Go and become a plumber, go and become an electrician, because we need trades, because of the real estate boom. That's great. I would really like to see my kids be able to go to university, get a very important degree that they love, and be able to stay in Canada. And I got to tell you, I believe, and nobody's talking about it, that the brain drain is alive and well. We are funding post-secondary education, and those people are going to Silicon Valley, they're going to Boston, and I see it because they come and talk to me as they're getting ready to graduate. They say they're the kind of jobs they want. Next thing I ask them how they make out, and I find out they've moved to the US. So this is where we are falling down. So again, I apologize for that slide being kind of sloppy here. Again, one of Michael Porter's key lessons is how do we talk about the value chain? And I heard a number of people use it on the panel today. That's great. So hopefully this isn't a new topic for you. It is the same concept of ecosystem, but I've stolen Michael Porter's value chain. And as I don't want anybody to sort of jump all over me today for the numbers I've put below. I'm not an economist. I don't have time to do all of the research. But I went through some StatsCan reports and some others and put down some numbers. The numbers themselves are not that important, but they help to illustrate a point. So across the top, we have a lot of government intervention in our lives. Patent law, Health Canada, finance, taxes, provincial ministries of health. They're there. The important support network to make sure that it's a fair system for all Canadians. But then we have other places where we're trying to create value in the system. Basic research, post-secondary education, company creation, translation of that science, ultimately selling the products to Canadians and exporting them. Well, look at where some of the big numbers here are. Okay, post-secondary education. Don't know if the number's right. It's from a 2013 report. Maybe it's bigger or smaller. $34 billion spent. That's great. I just told you I want my kids to all get a good education. But that's an investment. If we're going to spend that money, don't we want to get it back? Basic research. I think the number I had picked up was about $3 billion in provincial and federal spending. Maybe it's bigger, maybe it's, again, this is not all in life sciences, by the way. Some of them are. But just, again, these are big investment dollars. Put that money in, I want a return on investment. Jumping to the far end, export compared to internal consumption of goods. Small country, not a big population. We're consuming almost 3 times as much on drugs as we export. I think that's a red flag. Wouldn't we want to see, we're not going to probably change the market access number because we're Canadians. We want to consume, we want our lives to be better, but I want to see that export number go up. And the thing that's right in the middle that's driving me crazy is that if we want to take that post-secondary education, basic research investment, and improve exports, then we need to be better at company creation and technology translation. And it's the smallest number on the slide. We need more money in the sector. But I don't want the money from the government. They make bad decisions. Remember my Capitals hat? I don't think government knows how to invest. So here's my national perspective as a citizen. Federal and provincial commitment to innovation and translation of innovation to the benefit of Canadians, it's not coordinated and it's not maximized. That's where trade associations can really come in, but we have to have a singular voice. We want to keep pushing on what we want them to do, to have policies that will help all Canadians and optimize the system, not waste money. We need to have better measures of how we are translating basic research and post-secondary education into return on investment. I think the Conference Board of Canada tries to do that a little bit. Fraser Institute, and they always get labeled as, right-wing think tanks that are trying to, destroy the lives of socialist professors. It's not true. We're not trying to say that they're wasting money in research. I think that sometimes research doesn't always pay a return on investment. But if you don't somehow try to measure it, then for sure we're not going to improve the output. I already mentioned this dialogue about market access. It's not about big, bad foreign conglomerate companies coming to Canada to sell their drugs to us and charge us outrageous prices. We need to change that dialogue to value, because one day Aquinox wants to sell its drugs in Canada to our citizens because we think they're going to help them. So it's all got to be about value. So things like PMPRB have to be revitalized, where companies like J Labs, when J&J's putting money or Merck's putting money into a venture, that counts for contributing to the innovation in our system. And last but not least, we've got to optimize our company creation and translate to be able to improve our exports. So one of the things that I didn't talk about here was raising money, because I started by saying that the access to capital is there. But one of my biggest complaints is that there's not enough Canadian capital. And I could stand here for, I'm probably over time already, and I'm going to wrap up very quickly on one more slide, but I could stand and talk for multiple hours on things that I think need to change about Canadian capital. But who here remembers the foreign property tax, foreign property restrictions on pension funds? David, you don't count. You're older than I am. Anybody else? Okay. So for those of you who don't remember, it was put in place, I think, in the 80s, maybe a little bit earlier. It was phased out in 2005. But for all of us, either in pension funds or RSPs, you had to have a certain amount of your money in those funds invested in Canada, and then only a certain amount outside. And over time, the federal government relaxed those rules so that you could have more foreign content. I believe that was the right policy to do. I do not like it when government tells me how I have to invest my money. So changing those rules was the right policy decision in my mind. But the unintended consequences was a captive capital pool in Canada disappeared. Again, I'm not an economist. I do these things sort of in my sleep. I encourage anybody who wants to do a real analysis. I think you can find and track that as there was a relaxation in those rules in foreign property ownership, that there was an absolute correlation with the decrease in venture capital available to technology companies from Canadian LP sources. We lost a capital pool. If AGF wanted to have exposure to healthcare, rather than having to fund Canada's companies in Canada or be an LP in a fund, they just went and bought Merck or Gilead or Genentech on the NASDAQ, and they got the diversification they wanted. Right policy, unintended consequences. We have to find a way to get Canadians to invest back into R&D so that we get the maximum multiplier effect that I talked about. The more that Canadians invest in growing companies like mine, the more that money stays in the country and will repeat itself. Right now, 90% of the profits that are going to be made on Aquinox are going to go right outside of this country. That's tax leakage. And I had a meeting with the Deputy Minister of Finance, and we talked about flow-through shares, and he said, we don't like flow-through shares, there's tax leakage. Probably an accurate statement, but if all of our money is coming from foreign capital, that's tax leakage too. So we need this global view of how to optimize the entire value chain. So this is my last point. Increasing Canadian capital participation through incentives. Why couldn't we, rather than having flow-through shares, say, have a flow-through share RSP program where a large fund that's managed by professional people, where there is diversification in the fund, that if you buy into that fund, you can use that against tax credits on money you made in the oil fields. Or why couldn't we just say that certain, if we had Jason here who was talking about his way that he buckets companies to invest in, let's create funds that have that kind of bucket, Canadian knowledge-based industries, you get a better RSP reduction. Some way to incentivize money to stay in Canadian knowledge-based industry. I think that's the way to go. That's what I would like to see. So I just leave you with this last slide. As much as I'm a capitalist and a free market believer, I think Canadian, I'm very proud to be a patriot, and I want to see this country prosper. I think innovation is absolutely the secret to success. Again, Jason said that at lunch. I fully agree that that is the way of the future, that we need to take the riches we were given from natural resources and turn it into knowledge-based industries so that we have a diversified economy. But we have to optimize. We can't always have our hand out. It's time to stop asking the government for money, but tell them how we can change policy to get more money from non-government sources into our sector. Thank you very much for our time.
So now we're down to the last bit, and that would be me. I'm the last bit of the whole program. So there's a few things that I've heard today which are very cool. And David, Rick Mercer, you could take him on. I really think you could do the great rants. So there's a few terms that I've heard today as well that are kind of new. The responsibility for corporate citizenry. That's not something that you usually hear at a life sciences thing. We also heard things, failure is not an option. Well, failure is an option. And I think we need to remind people that if they're going to invest and they're going to try these things, if you fail quick, but try again, right? So we need to be able to do that. We want to be able to maximize our chances for success, and that's really what we're talking about today. We need to brag. Canadians they sit on their hands so much, and we just don't tell our stories enough. And I know, David, I bet you don't have any trouble telling those stories to the Americans and say, come and be a great Canadian and come and see what we can do here. There are a few other things, though, that are very cool. We need to remove barriers to prosperity, right? These are sort of quotes from some of the different people here. Drowning puppies. It's another term that I don't usually hear at these things, but that's the way it is, right? Not just about developing drugs. So Life Sciences Ontario is a multidisciplinary life sciences sector, so I want to re-emphasize that. We've heard from people in the bioeconomy, the health sector, the ag sector, the food sector, as well as others. Life Sciences offers biological solutions to all sorts of human issues, right? Whether it's things like drug development, but it also applies to things like climate change, the meetings that have been going on in Paris for the last 3 weeks, which our premier has been to now twice, right? So it's obviously a priority for this government. A lot of these sectors have common issues and have common platform challenges. We've heard about, how many times have we heard the word can't raise capital? Well, except for maybe the last presentation. Capital is an issue for some. Talent, thin talent, we need to increase the depth and breadth of our talent. This goes not just in one sector, but all life sciences sectors. So that's one of the beauties of what Life Sciences Ontario is doing. Anything that we can do to impact the human condition, we're really going to be filling what our mandate is. We need to have policies that will bring people and business to Canada. That's another thing that I've heard loud and clear today. And then the other flip side of that coin is we also have to have policies which don't push companies out of the province, right? And so it really takes a very good policy maker to understand the implications of policies made in one area, whether it's finance, and the impacts on healthcare or on agriculture or the environment or other components of business. So we really need to push the overarching Canadian perspective. And there's really only one way to do that, and that's to speak with one voice to the government, and that's what Life Sciences Ontario does. I know, I think it was Alan Odette who asked who was members of Life Sciences Ontario. Hopefully by the end of the day, you're all going to be members of Life Sciences Ontario, because it's with the collective voice that we can make a difference. And that's really what we're trying to do in these meetings, is to make a difference. Now, these meetings don't come off without a lot of support for different folks. I didn't introduce myself, did I? I'm John Kelly. I'm vice chair of, oh yeah, I guess I'm up there, yeah. Yeah, that's who I am. So this meeting this is either our 6th or 7th fall forum or symposium that we've had, and it's really gained a lot of momentum, but to gain that momentum, you need a lot of support. So You have to really thank the team who put this together. Jason Field took the lead from Life Sciences Ontario, but Christine Bayards, Benny Ravinsky, Mark Smithies, Jason Laughlin's over here, Ella Smith's over there, Seth is at the back, and then the team from First Stage, you know, Sue Monroe, you've all met, Brian Craig and Peter Jones, they've been wandering around. Peter's at the back. Brian, where are you? He's probably out getting ready for the other part. So we should give a round of applause for this team for putting it all together, please. It does not take, these things do not come off very easily. And when you look at the quality of the speakers, there was a lot of work that was put into it. We also have to thank our sponsors, because I know everybody pays their registration, but I think that if that registration would pay for the whole event, you'd be sadly mistaken. So think organizations that are up here, I won't go through and list them all, but you can see who is really supporting this event. And as we move forward, we'll look for a broader spectrum of supporters, you know, as we go through next year. If you can maybe go to the next one as well. Many of you have heard that there was a Queen's Park Day yesterday for Life Sciences Ontario, and I've heard that between 25 and 30 people from Life Sciences Ontario were meeting with ministers and with MPPs and with staffers and also those in opposition. And that's another way that we get our message out to various folks within the provincial government. It's key that you understand what's going on here, because in the background, Life Sciences Ontario is doing a lot of things which you may not overtly see. So one of the things we're doing is we're trying to tell you as many of the different projects and components of Life Sciences Ontario, and Jason Field certainly has taken the lead for that. We also have platinum sponsors for Life Sciences Ontario, RX&D, who now has a new name change, I understand, right? Innovative Medicines Canada. You heard it here first. Well, maybe not, but and then the City of Toronto, KPMG, and Sanofi Pasteur, platinum sponsors for Life Sciences Ontario. Ernst & Young and the City of Richmond Hill, they come in as silver sponsors, silver corporate sponsors. Without these organizations, you know, they're really the key supporters for the organization. But the one thing I'll end up with is this is all about people. And people have a lot of voices. We're just one voice, and Life Sciences Ontario will be the one voice for life sciences in this province. Now we have a networking reception. I think it's just out there, right, Jason? So please take advantage of the people who are here. There's many speakers that you can catch up with, and enjoy your evening. Thanks very much.